Welcome to Get Started with Lightroom CC, Adobe's beginner tutorial series designed to help you use Lightroom CC, which is Adobe's cloud-centric photo service that's a complete package for editing, organizing, storing, and sharing your photos. Now, Lightroom CC is not just an app. Instead, it's an ecosystem, or you might think of it as a family of apps that you can use across different devices: computers, mobile devices, the web, even Apple TV. And here's the point to remember when you're trying to get a grasp on how it all works. The whole Lightroom CC ecosystem revolves around one central point: the cloud. The cloud-centric nature of Lightroom CC is what makes it unique and allows it to offer you special advantages. The thing you'll notice right off the bat is that your photos and the changes that you make to them are everywhere. Every photo that you add to Lightroom CC on a mobile device, a computer, or a web browser automatically uploads at full resolution to the cloud. And because all your photos are in the cloud, you can view and work with them everywhere that you use Lightroom CC, as long as you're logged in with your Adobe ID. So, the same photos that you see here in Lightroom CC on my computer are automatically here on my iPhone too, and here in Lightroom CC in a web browser. And if I edit a photo or organize it into an album on any of these devices, that change automatically syncs through the cloud to Lightroom CC on all my other devices. I could even run Lightroom CC on another computer and access my same photos, which means that I can work on the same photos in Lightroom CC on a desktop and a laptop, or on a machine at home and one at work. I'll walk you through some of these scenarios later in this tutorial series, but for now, just keep in mind that it's the cloud at the center of Lightroom CC that allows all of this to happen. Another benefit of all your photos being in the cloud is that Adobe can apply its amazing artificial intelligence and machine learning technology to make it easier to find photos that you're looking for based on what's in a photo. Later in this tutorial series, I'll show you how that works. And because all your full resolution photos are in the cloud and all your edits are non-destructive of those photos, you can rest assured that you have an automatic backup of all your original photos without having to worry about where to store them and how to manage them across storage drives. So that's a quick overview of Lightroom CC's cloud-based system and what it can do for you. In the rest of this course, we'll spend some time looking at the Lightroom CC desktop app, mostly because it's the newest piece of the Lightroom ecosystem. The good news is that it works a lot like Lightroom CC on your other devices too, so much of what you'll learn here applies to Lightroom CC on mobile and the web as well. One last thing. Don't mix up the relatively new Lightroom CC with the Lightroom that's been around for years now. That one is now called Lightroom Classic CC. Lightroom Classic CC is alive and well, and it offers an alternative, desktop-centric workflow based on files and folders that you manage yourself. And you can choose which is best for your needs: Lightroom CC's modern, cloud-centric workflow, or Lightroom Classic's desktop-centric workflow. So now, let's jump in to take a closer look at Lightroom CC. If you want to work with a photo in Lightroom CC, you first have to add that photo to the Lightroom CC ecosystem. In this lesson, I'll show you how to do that in Lightroom CC on a computer, although keep in mind that you can add photos to Lightroom CC from a mobile device or from the web too. We're going to add the sample files for this tutorial, which you can download from the Adobe web page for this tutorial. But what I'm about to show you applies to adding any photos to the Lightroom CC desktop app. When you first launch Lightroom CC on your computer, don't be surprised if you see some photos already in Lightroom CC. Photos that are in the cloud, like this photo that I added to the Lightroom app on my iPhone, should automatically show up in Lightroom CC on your computer too. When you want to add more photos or videos to Lightroom CC on your computer, go to this plus symbol on the left side of the workspace and click. Now, if you had a device like a camera or a camera memory card connected to your computer, you would see a menu at this point from which you could choose to add files directly to Lightroom CC from that device. Otherwise, clicking this plus symbol opens a Finder window like this on a Mac or a File Explorer window on Windows. From here, you'll navigate to the folder on your computer or on a connected external drive that contains the photos you want to add to Lightroom CC. For example, to add the sample files for this tutorial, navigate to the location to which you downloaded the sample files. Mine happen to be on my desktop, so I'll select the sample files folder there, and then I'll click the Review for Import button down here. If you're on Windows, you'll click the Add Folder button. That opens this preview window, where you'll see small previews of all the photos in the selected folder. The blue check marks on these photos mean that they will all be added to Lightroom CC. If there's a photo that you're sure you don't want, then just uncheck it, like this. We actually want to bring in all the sample files, so I'm going to go up to the top of this window and check Select All. Over on the right, there's a scroll bar. I'll use it to scroll down, so I can show you that in the bottom row, there's one photo that has a gray overlay and no check mark. That's one that Lightroom CC has recognized as a duplicate of a photo that I already have in my Lightroom CC, so it won't be added again to the program. Other than that, there is really only one other option in this window. If you want, you can go up to the top and choose to include all of these photos in an album during the import process. An album is a group that lets you see the selected photos all in one place. Putting photos in an album is something you could do later inside Lightroom CC, but doing it here saves you that step later. So let's go ahead and make an album for these sample files so you can easily access them in Lightroom CC. If you already have some albums, when you click this button, you'll see them here in a list. We don't have any yet. If you want to make a new album, you can do that by clicking New. Let's name this new album Toot 1 for the first tutorial in this series, and then just click Create. All that's left to do is to go up to the top right and click the blue button to add all these photos to Lightroom CC. That closes the preview window and takes you back to the main Lightroom CC workspace. Over on the right, you'll see a cloud icon. The blue animation on that icon means that your photos are being uploaded to Adobe's cloud. Just how long it takes to upload your photos to the cloud depends on how many photos you have, the size of your photos, and your internet connection. But you can still work on your photos even while they're uploading. Over on the left, I have the My Photos column showing. If your column isn't showing, then click this box icon on the far left. Notice that right now, we're just looking at recently added files. If you want to see all your photos, click All Photos here. And if you ever want to see just the photos in the album that we made, the Toot 1 album, you can come down to the Albums panel and click Toot 1 there. So that's all there is to adding photos. Keep in mind that when you do add photos to Lightroom CC from any device, all those photos are automatically uploaded at their full resolution and are stored for you in Adobe's cloud. So if you move the photos that you started with on your computer or camera, that's okay. You can even delete those, and your full resolution originals will still be safe and backed up in the cloud, and they'll be treated like your master images. You'll have access to them to edit, organize, and share in Lightroom CC on any of your devices. Let's take a quick look around the interface of the Lightroom CC desktop app to give you a sense of the layout and where everything is. Over on the left is a column with options that you'll use when you're reviewing and organizing your photos. Here, you can choose which group of photos to see, whether that's all your photos or those you've just recently added, or you can even choose photos by date. And here, you can choose photos you put in an album or create a new album. You can hide and show this column by clicking the My Photos icon, the one that looks like a file box over here. Then up at the top of the screen is the search box, where you can search for photos by the content they contain, even if you haven't taken the time to add keyword tags to your photos. For example, I could use this to find my photos that have mountains in them or water in them. Next to that is the filter icon. Clicking that opens a bar with a number of filters that you can use to find photos by attributes, like stars you've added to them, or flags you've added, or these other characteristics. Over on the right is the share icon. If I select a photo and then click the share icon, I can choose to save a copy of the photo with any edits I've applied to my computer so I can share it out myself. And you can share photos directly to Facebook from here too. And to the right of that is the cloud icon. From here, you can check the sync status of your photos. One of the nice things about the Lightroom CC interface is that everything is here on one screen. So when you're ready to edit a photo, you don't have to switch to another module. Just come over to the right side of the screen and click the edit icon here. That opens this column of editing controls, and it closes the column over on the left. In the column on the right, there are more editing tools. There's a crop tool, a healing brush tool for removing unwanted content, and some selective editing tools for editing just part of a photo. And these three dots represent a menu of more editing commands, including the command to take a photo directly to Photoshop for further editing that you can't do in Lightroom CC, like combining multiple photos or adding text. The tag icon at the bottom right opens a panel where you can keyword tag your photos, and the info icon displays information about the selected photo. Coming down to the bottom of the screen, there is a film strip that you can use to move between photos one at a time. And down at the very bottom, there's a toolbar where you can add star ratings and flags and view your photos in different configurations, like this large detail view or one of these grid views. We'll look at these view options in more detail in the next lesson in this tutorial. And you can learn more about the other features I pointed out in this tour as you continue through the rest of the tutorials in the Get Started with Lightroom CC tutorial series. You can view your photos in a few different ways in Lightroom CC. When you want to see lots of photos at once, you'll like the grid view. Make sure you've selected the source of photos that you want to view. That may be all photos, or recently added, or by date, or if you're following along with the sample files for this tutorial, choose the album of sample files that we made when we first imported these files into Lightroom CC. You can switch between views down at the bottom of the screen in the toolbar. The first icon there is a grid view called Photo Grid, and that's what we're looking at now. Photo Grid displays your photos in a grid pattern like this with no borders or information around the images, so you can focus on just your photographs. In this view, you can quickly see which photos are vertical, which are horizontal, and which are square, or any other aspect ratio. You can make the photos larger or smaller in the grid by going down to the toolbar, where there's a thumbnail slider on the right. Dragging the thumbnail slider to the right will make the photos bigger, and then you can use the scroll bar to scroll up or down. Dragging the thumbnail slider to the left will show you more of your photos, but they'll be smaller. You can also change the order in which photos are displayed in the grid by going over to the Sort menu here in the toolbar and choosing a different sort order or reversing the order. If you'd rather see your photos in a more regular grid, then in the toolbar, click the second icon from the left, which is a different grid view, the Square Grid. The Square Grid displays all your photos in squares like this, whether they're horizontal or vertical or any aspect ratio, and they all appear uniform. In this view, you can see some information about each photo. For example, if you've added a star or a flag to a photo, and you hover over that photo, like this one, you'll see the stars or flags highlighted under the photo. You can also add stars or flags from here. And notice that there's a check mark over here. That's the sync icon. The check mark means that syncing is complete on this photo, and the photo is now backed up to the cloud. If I make a change to a photo, that change will sync up to the cloud too. So keep your eye on this sync icon as I click on the pick flag under this photo to add a flag that means it's one of my favorites. Notice that the sync icon is now a blue icon, meaning that the sync is taking place. When the sync is finished, this will change back to a check mark. Now, when you're reviewing photos to choose one to edit or to share, you'll sometimes want to see it in a larger view. In that case, select a photo. I'm going to select this photo of the rings, and then go down to the toolbar and click the Detail View icon here. You can change the zoom level of a photo in Detail View by just clicking on the photo. and that will change the zoom with focus on the portion of the photo where you clicked. In this case, I'm working with a large photo, and so it's zoomed in. When you are zoomed in on a large photo like this, you probably won't see the whole thing in your window, so you can move the photo around in the window by clicking, holding, and dragging it, and that's called panning. Then, if you want to zoom out to see the whole photo again, click one more time on the photo. Another way to change the zoom level is to come down to the icons here, Fit, Fill, and 1-to-1, and just click on the view that you want. So when I'm checking the focus on the photo or sharpening a photo, I'll usually go to 1-to-1 view, and then when I want to see the whole photo in the window, I'll click on Fit View. You probably noticed that when we switched to Detail View, we got this film strip under the large photo. The film strip contains thumbnails of all the photos that are in the selected source, and you can switch to see a large view of any of these photos by clicking on it in the film strip. If the film strip contains more photos than fit on your screen, go to the scroll bar at the bottom of the screen and drag. And you can access other photos that way. If you don't see the photo that you're looking for in the film strip, that means it's not in the source that you selected over here. So you might click on All Photos, and you'd have access to all the photos that you've added to Lightroom CC from any device. Now, one more thing, as you get used to working in Lightroom CC, you may want to speed up your workflow by using some shortcuts rather than clicking on icons. And those are G for Grid and D for Detail. Pressing G takes you to one of the grid views. Pressing G again will take you to the other grid view, and pressing D will take you to the large detail view of whatever photo is selected at the moment. So that's an overview of how to view your photos in the Lightroom CC desktop app. A little bit of organization will help you keep track of your photos, and Lightroom CC makes organizing and managing your photos simple. In this lesson, we'll take a look at some tips about managing your photos in Lightroom CC. If you'd like to use the sample files to follow along, download them from the Adobe webpage for this tutorial. Click Add Photos, and in the Import Preview window, create an album for just these files, as I've done down here, and then click Add Photos. Lightroom CC does some of the photo organizing for you over here in the column on the left. Here, you can access all photos that you've added to the Lightroom ecosystem, which includes photos you added from any Lightroom CC access point, mobile, web, or desktop. Or you can choose to see your most recently added photos, and that's broken down for you by the last few times that you added photos. Lightroom CC also automatically keeps track of your photos by their capture date, so you can quickly get to photos that you took in a particular year, or you can go deeper to see photos that you took in a particular month, or even on a particular day. And you also can make as many albums as you want to organize your photos by subjects, by projects, or any topic that makes most sense to you. I'll select the latest album that I made when I imported the sample files for this tutorial. Now, what you don't see in Lightroom CC are storage folders, like those you may be used to seeing if you're used to using Lightroom Classic. That's because Lightroom CC stores the full resolution originals of your photos in the cloud, and it doesn't use a folder system there. Because the originals that Lightroom CC references are all in the cloud, you don't have to worry about managing folders of your photos on your local drives. In fact, you don't even have to keep local copies at all. However, if you do want to keep local copies, you can. To set that up, go up to Adobe Lightroom CC on a Mac or Edit on Windows and choose Preferences. Click on the local storage preference and go down and check Store a copy of all originals locally. By default, that will store an extra copy of your photos in a package format in the Pictures folder on your computer. If you have a lot of photos, it may make more sense to store your extra local copies on a large external drive. To do that, click Change Location over here and specify the drive where you want to keep a local copy of your photos. Lightroom CC will still upload to the cloud your full resolution originals and any changes you make to them, but you'll have a duplicate copy of the unchanged photos that you started with if you want them. Or if you want an extra local copy of just specific photos, go to the square grid icon here, or press G on your keyboard again. Select one or more photos, and click the check mark under any of the selected photos. And here you can click this Store Original Locally switch to get a local copy of just those selected photos. One more important thing about managing your photos, and that's about deleting photos. Let's say that you have a photo you decide you really don't want to keep in your Lightroom CC library for some reason. You could delete it by selecting the photo and then going up to the Edit menu and choosing Delete Photo, or right-clicking the photo and choosing Delete Photo from there. Be sure that you understand that if you do this, you're deleting the original of the photo, and you're deleting it from the cloud and from all your devices too. So unless you have a local copy of the photo, it will be permanently gone everywhere, which is what this message means. So unless you're sure the photo is a throwaway, don't delete it unless you have a local copy. So that's a quick look at managing your photos in Lightroom CC. There are more tools you can use to further organize your photos, including albums, which we'll cover in the next lesson in this tutorial, and flags and stars, which we'll cover in the next tutorial. Albums are a way to organize photos inside Lightroom CC so you can quickly access or share a particular group of photos. So let's take a look at how albums work. If the column on the left isn't open, click the My Photos icon here. In my Albums panel, you can see the albums we created at the beginning of each tutorial in this Get Started series for the sample files for that tutorial. So when an album is selected, like this album of sample files, over in the grid, we see only the photos in that album. As you've already seen, you can make an album in the Import Preview window at the same time that you're adding photos into Lightroom CC. If I want to make an album from inside Lightroom CC, I'll move to the plus icon here in the Albums panel, and from here I'll choose Create Album. I'd like to make an album of photos of dogs, so I'll type dogs and I'll click Create. And here's my new dogs album over in the Albums panel. On the right you can see how many photos are in that album at the moment. To add a photo to this album, I'll just click on it in the grid and then click, hold, and drag it on top of the album. And you can do this with multiple photos at a time. So I'm going to click on this photo of a dog and come over here and hold the Shift key and click on this photo, and that selects all the photos in between, all of which happen to have dogs. And then if I want to add other photos to this selection that aren't next to one another, I'll hold down the Command key on a Mac or the Control key on Windows, and I'll click on a couple of other photos. And then I'll click, hold, and drag from any of those photos over on top of my dog's album in the Albums panel. Now if I click that album, we see just the dog photos. Now let's say that I want another album that's just photos of my dog. I'll deselect all the selected photos by clicking in a blank area of the grid, or holding the Command key on a Mac or the Control key on Windows and pressing the D key on my keyboard for deselect. And then I'll click on this photo, and I'll hold the Shift key and click on this photo. And with those three photos selected, I'm going to make another album. And this time I'll check Include the three selected photos, because you can select photos before you make an album, or you can drag them into an album after you make the album. And I'll call this album Sam, the name of my dog, and I'll click Create. And when I click the Sam album, I see just the photos of my dog. Notice that we have some of the same photos in this album and in this album. So the point is that the same photos can appear in more than one album. I'm going to deselect those three photos by pressing Command D on a Mac or Control D on Windows. Now let's say there's a photo that you don't want to keep in an album. I'll select that photo, and I can either right-click and choose Remove from Album, or go up to the Edit menu and choose Remove from Album from there. Removing this photo from this album won't delete it from Lightroom CC. It will still be in the All Photos area in Lightroom CC, and it will still be in any other albums in which I've included this photo. So let's go ahead and remove this photo from the Dogs album, And when I go to the Sam album, here's the photo that I just deleted from the dogs album. It's still here. You can also delete a whole album, and that doesn't delete its photos from Lightroom CC. I'll right-click on the Sam album in the Albums panel, and I'll choose Delete Album, and I'll click OK. And if I click back on the dogs album, the photos of Sam are still here. As you make more albums, your list of albums can get pretty long. So you can make folders and tuck your albums inside folders. Let's create a folder for all these sample file albums. I'll go to the plus symbol, and I'll choose Create Folder. I'll give the folder a name, and I'll click Create. I'll select the first tutorial sample file album and drag it on top of the folder, and that puts it inside. Or you can drag multiple albums together. So this time I'll select this tutorial file album and hold the Shift key and select this one and drag from any one of them up into the Get Started Sample Files folder. To make more room in my Albums panel, I can click this triangle to collapse that folder, and then if I need any of those albums, I'll just click that triangle again to select whatever album that I need. So consider using albums to organize your own photos by subjects, by projects, by favorites, and more. And remember that your albums and any changes you make to them automatically sync through the cloud to Lightroom CC on all your devices. To view some information about a photo, select the photo in Lightroom CC's grid, and then go to the bottom right and click the eye icon. That opens the Info panel. At the top of the panel are some fields in which you can enter information: title, caption, and copyright. If I click in the copyright field, that automatically enters a copyright symbol, and then you can type the photographer's name and date. Next you see the file name, and that's something you can't change in Lightroom CC currently. And down here is the date of capture, and you also have information about where the photo was captured if you took the photo with a GPS-enabled device. So you can see down here that this was taken with an iPhone that was GPS-enabled, and we know that because down at the bottom we have an excerpt from Google Maps that shows exactly where the photo was taken. There's also useful information here about the dimensions of the photo, its size on disk, the file format, and the camera settings that were used to shoot the photo. And finally, if I scroll down to the bottom, you can see the sync status of this photo. So the next time you're looking for information about one of your photos, just click on the eye icon to get to the Info panel. One of the most exciting things that you can do in Lightroom CC is to use it to improve your photographs, and the editing controls in Lightroom CC are designed to help you do just that. They're both powerful in terms of what they let you do, and at the same time they're presented in a streamlined way that makes them simple to discover and to use. This lesson is an overview of the editing controls and techniques in Lightroom CC. If you're following along with the sample files for this tutorial, or with your own photos, add those to Lightroom CC as explained in the first tutorial in this series. To remind you, download the sample files from the tutorial page, and then click the Add Photos button in Lightroom CC. Navigate to the sample files for this tutorial, tutorial number 2 in this Get Started series. Select the sample files folder, and then click the Review for Import button on a Mac or the Choose Folder button on Windows. In the preview window that opens, there's really only one thing to do, and that is to go up to the Add to Album area and click the arrow there, and click New, so you can create an album for these sample files so you can easily access them as a group in Lightroom CC. I'll call this album Toot 2, and then I'll click Create. I'll leave all of these photos checked and come up to the top right and click the Add Photos button. To edit a photo, select it here in the grid, and then come over to the far right and click the Editing icon. Here you've got lots of controls to work with. The controls in the column that just opened are the global controls. They affect the entire photo. You have controls for adjusting light and color, and if you scroll down you see that you have panels of other controls too to explore. And then over on the right there's a crop tool, And by the way, if I do need to crop a photo, that's usually what I do first so that I don't waste time editing areas that I'm going to crop away anyway. And then below that are some local editing tools, tools for editing just part of a photo. So after I apply the crop tool if I need to, I usually come to the column of global editing tools, and I'll just start at the top because it's easy to do it that way, and use the controls that I think I need on my photo, adjusting the lighting and then adjusting the color, and then going down to some other panels if I need to. And of course you can go out of order, so if I have a photo with a really bad color cast, I might first come here to the white balance tools and correct that. So now a word about how I set up my workspace here. I usually will collapse this film strip at the bottom that shows you all the other photos in the selected source. To collapse the film strip, come down to this icon in the toolbar and click. And the other thing I like to do is to come over to this menu with the 3 dots. I call this the More menu. And from there, choose Single Panel Mode. What this does is just keep one panel open at a time. And this can be helpful when you're working on a smaller screen. So notice that if I click on another panel, the light panel closes and the color panel opens. Let's go up and open the light panel, and here we have sliders as our controls. Now you could just drag sliders, and you can see that the image automatically changes. But sometimes you may want to have more control over these sliders. So in that case, you can click in the value field for a slider, and then you can use the up and down arrow keys on your keyboard to adjust the slider in small increments. If you hold the Shift key, that adjusts in larger increments. And then press Enter or Return on the keyboard. I find it really helpful when I'm editing to compare a before and after view. If you want to do that, come down to the toolbar and click this icon. And that shows you the original, the before view, and then click again, and there's the after view with your edits. And of course, it's always important to know how to undo. If you go up to the Edit menu, you can choose Undo there. It tells you exactly what you're undoing, which is the last slider move that you made. So here I'm undoing that adjustment I'd made to the shadow slider, and you can keep going backwards in time that way, and you also can move forwards in time with the Redo command. Or you can use the keyboard shortcuts, Command-Z on a Mac or Control-Z on a Windows machine for undo, and Redo is Shift-Command-Z on a Mac, Shift-Control-Z on Windows. And then if you want to revert everything back to the very beginning, you can come over to the 3-dot menu, the More menu, and from there you can choose Revert to Original. And if you like keyboard shortcuts, the shortcut for that is Shift-R. Now that you have an overall feel for the editing controls, you probably can't wait to dive down into them and get to work. But before we do that, and we will in the following tutorials in this series, let's see how to use presets to do some of the editing work for us in the next lesson in this tutorial. If you're someone who likes applying filters to photos in different mobile apps, then I'm pretty sure you're going to like the editing presets in Lightroom CC, which you'll find here in the desktop app and on the mobile app as well. They give you a quick way to change the look of a photo, and as we'll see in this lesson, they also come in handy as a way to learn what different editing controls are capable of. If you're following along with the sample files for this tutorial, go to either the Toot2 album that you made during import or up to All Photos, and select this photo of the roses. Then go over and click the editing icon, or just press E on your keyboard to go into the editing workspace. And to set up for this lesson, come down to the menu with the 3 dots on the right, and if single panel mode is checked like this, click it to disable single panel mode, because I want you to be able to open more than one panel at a time during this lesson. And open the light panel and the color panel and the effects panel so you can see the sliders in those panels. Now let's take a look at presets. Go to the bottom of the column of editing controls and click Presets there. That opens another column with categories of presets that come with Lightroom CC. To open a category, like the color category, just click its category name, and then you'll see a list of presets. Now just hover over a preset. Don't click the presets yet. And keep your eye on the photo as you do that, and you'll see the photo change to give you a preview of how that preset will look on the full-size photo. So this is useful not only for choosing the preset that you want to apply, it's also a great way to learn what some of the editing controls actually do. For example, I'm going to hover over this high contrast preset. Notice in the light panel on the right that the contrast slider is slid way over, and that's what creates this really edgy look with dark shadows and bright highlights. Let's hover over another one, the natural preset. And notice that other sliders in the light and the color panels have moved to other values. So that's a bit of a recipe that you can try on your own photos even when you're not using presets. So now I'm going to go back to the presets and open another category, the black and white category. The black and white presets give you a quick way to convert a photo to black and white, and as you can see as you hover over these, you can get quite a different number of black and white looks. To emphasize the old-fashioned look of this photo, I'm going to try out the black and white sepia tone. So now I'm just hovering over that. I like the look, and so to apply the preset, I'll click on the preset. Now here's something to keep in mind. Presets are cumulative, and that means you can add more than one on top of another. So to increase the antique look of this photo, let's go down to another category, the components category of presets. And there I'm going to add a heavy vignette so you can really see it. And maybe I'll add some grain too. And that's really all there is to applying presets to your photos. Now, if you don't like a preset that you've applied, you can undo by going up to the Edit menu and choosing Undo, or if you've applied multiple presets, you may want to go over to the menu on the right with the three dots, and from there, revert to original, or I just use the keyboard shortcut Shift-R. And that removes everything. If I undo, Command-Z on the Mac or Control-Z on the PC, that's an undo of my revert to original step, and so it brings back the multiple presets that I'd applied to this photo. Now here's one extra tip. If you want to keep different versions of a photo, maybe each with a different preset, in your Lightroom CC library, go up to the Edit menu and choose Make a Copy. Now I'm going to go down and open the film strip so you can see that we now have two copies of the same photo. So now I could go and select this other photo in the film strip and I could give it a different look. Now that you know how simple it is to apply presets, try out some other presets on some of the other sample files for this tutorial or on your own photos, and try adding more than one to get a variety of different looks with just a couple clicks. The last lesson in this tutorial covered the basics of using presets on your photos. Now let's take that one step further and learn how to create your own preset that you can use on other photos too. Select a photo from the Tutu album that you made at the beginning of this tutorial. If you're in the editing workspace now, you can select this photo from the film strip, or you can select it here in the grid view and then go up and click the editing icon. I'm going to open my presets by going to the bottom of the screen and clicking Presets. I'd like to make a preset to bring out the warm tones like the pinks and golds in this urban scene. To save time, I'll start with an existing preset. I'll go to the Presets panel and I'm going to open the Creative category of presets. And from there, I'm going to apply the Warm Shadows preset. I like the way that looks, but I'd like to change it a little bit, opening up the darker areas of the photo. So I'll go over to the Light panel in the column on the right, and I'm going to drag the Shadows slider over to the right. And I like that look better. So now I want to save this as my own preset. To do that, I'll go to the top of the Presets panel. I'll click the three dots there, and that opens a menu where I can choose to create preset. I think it's a good idea to give your presets meaningful names so you can tell at a glance what they do. So I'm going to call this one WS for Warm Shadows, and then I'll say plus 50 shadows. And I'll click Save. Now I'll scroll down And you can see that there's a user presets category of presets, and there's the new custom preset that I just made and saved. And I can apply this preset to any photos now or in the future. So let's give it a try on another photo. I'll select this photo of cherry blossoms in the film strip, and then I'll go back to the presets. I'll hover over my user preset. If I like the way that looks, I'll click to apply the preset to that photo. And I might try it on different kinds of subjects too. Let's see how this preset looks on a photo of a person. I'll come over to the film strip and I'll select this photo, and then I'll go back and hover over my user preset, and I really like the color and punch that the new preset adds to this photo, so I'll click to apply it here too. Now that you know how to make user presets in Lightroom CC, have fun experimenting and making your own creative presets.